Thank you all so much for joining us. Um, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of speakers today. We're going to hear from FSC, from Swoon Alliance, from Decrim 305, Below Sea Level Aid, and hopefully Swap Behind Bars. Oh, Blair is here. Blair, we're going to promote you to a panelist. So good to have you here. Wonderful. So to kick it off, um, we have the one and only Lotus Lane, erotic professional extraordinaire, and community liaison for Free Speech Coalition. Free Speech Coalition is the trade association for the adult industry, and they are doing the incredibly important, often thankless, hard work of protecting our right to make porn and to have free speech and to be erotic professionals online and also to protect us from banking discrimination. Lotus, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lotus Lane. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm based out of Los Angeles, California. I've been in the adult industry since I would say 2013. I've been an erotic professional doing other things like off of Craigslist and dominatrixing in my hometown before that since I would say 2010. So I've been around doing various work and started more in advocacy work around 2014. And that's what I'm still doing to this day, along with other things like intimacy coordinating and still performing for my fan site. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time and also for sharing a bit about yourself. You sound like a well-rounded erotic professional. And
Thank you. Oh, yeah, and I joined FSC in 2017, Free Speech Coalition. So yeah.
awesome. Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with FSC, could you tell us a little bit about what Free Speech Coalition is and what you all do?
Yeah, it's an organization that we started in 1992, I believe, and it was basically to fight the federal, I would say, obscenity charges that kept coming against different porn producers individually. They were being jailed and stuff. So this was their way of coalitioning together and pooling money and funds to fight federal legislation. And we still do that to this day. And also alert people of like state legislation that's going on that could affect their work.
And there's a lot of legislation kicking around
Yes,
that
yes,
can and does
especially.
affect our work. Sasha, if you could drop a link to FSC in the chat, you should all know about FSC and get on their newsletter. Lotus, it's been a busy year for FSC. Can you tell us a little bit about what your team has been doing this year?
Yeah, so in 2025, our focus was a lot on combating the banking discrimination that a lot of sex workers or erotic professionals face. That's led into our current fight to, not really a fight, but we're fundraising and it takes a lot of effort to create a credit union that will be erotic professionals friendly. So, being that it is such a large task and we have to prove certain numbers of membership and whatnot, it would really help and benefit if we had more members at Free Speech Coalition because then we could show the powers that be at like federal trade commissions and all of that, that we have the numbers substantial enough to create a credit union. We've also been reaching out to adjacent communities that face similar issues. So maybe it'll be like gambling industries or cannabis industries, other industries that are legal yet discriminated against or heavily legislated against. And on top of that, yes, we have been working against the age verification laws that are popping up in different states, but unfortunately, we did lose the federal fight. So now our pivot is more on how we can be proactive, preparing other adult businesses and creators for what's to come, which a lot of us don't know what's to come because there's always new surprises with this administration, but just being able to pivot and fortify our businesses in, I would say, extremely hostile business territory and political territory.
Yeah, the world has never been kind to the adult industry or erotic
Yeah.
professionals or sex workers,
Yeah.
and certainly they aren't now. I know that FSC has been working really hard to fight age verification. We have a lot of different kinds of people who are attending this webinar. Could you just tell us what age verification is really quickly for anyone who might not know?
Yeah, it's the idea behind age verification is that adults would show their ID or biometric data like a, ID or eyeball scan or retina scan or something like that, face scan, to get access to adult websites. It sounds good on the surface, but different states have put a lot of arbitrary rules on these laws. Like I think the one in Tennessee says you have to verify every hour. So literally you could be in the middle of just looking at maybe X-rated materials, whether it be literal porn or maybe it's just sexual education materials or LGBTQ explicit materials, and you'd have to verify every hour. So things like that are really what we're fighting is the intrusive um add-ons that intrude on adults' privacy, and they don't necessarily protect children because we know children are smart enough to use VPNs or go on other websites that aren't hosted in the US. So this literally does nothing to protect children. Uh,
That's so surprising. I'm saying it's so surprising. All this save the children, protect the children from materials harmful to minors, which is a concerning phrase in itself to me because we know this is going to be applied to some of the things you suggested, like sex ed materials, anything about LGBTQ identity, maybe just
mhm.
pleasure products.
Right, yeah.
And I think, was it in Michigan, there was an age verification law where they just said it, about linking pornography to the identity of transgender people, right? Just
Right.
defining trans experience in trans people as pornographic in themselves.
Yeah, their existence. Yeah, so it's problematic because it's too vague and it allows too much for the states that want to discriminate to be able to.
Yeah, this is it feels like again and again, sex workers in the adult industry are like canaries in the coal mine for things that are going to affect a much bigger part of the population, if not everybody at some point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, people don't listen to our alerts as much as they should. They don't heed the warnings. So that's another thing we have been and will continue to work on at FSC is just um widening public visibility of what a sex worker is. So please, in this moment in time, don't hide. Just because the conservatives are the ones that are in power, the psychopaths. Please make yourselves more seen and visible as far as what's positive about sex work, because I think the narrative that is at play and that is dominating is all of the detrimental sides of sex work, and they're able to push this trafficking narrative, which is literally not sex work. It's the opposite of because it's by force. So, yeah, I think we just need to, even if we're not able to be visible with our faces, which I do understand we can be visible but by written word. I have a sex worker friend that writes a lot of op-eds and sends them out to different publications that will listen to what we have to say. So yeah.
That's a great point. There's a lot of ways for us to educate the broader public, right? To change
Yeah,
the
and be
narrative
visible.
around sex work and also to raise the alarm on things like age verification. I hope that everybody here, if we're connected to people in our worlds who are not part of the adult industry or part of our sex working communities, and we can be
Yeah.
really important messengers to help people understand how a bill like that sounds good, like age verification. That can sound
Yeah.
great, and it's up to us to help educate our neighbors, colleagues, family members, allies, right?
Yeah, in the end, age verification laws in the US only hinder small businesses in the US. Like quite literally, creators and producers in the US are small businesses in the eyes of like corporate America. And they are the ones losing out on the money, whereas like the offshore hosted porn sites are gaining more of the traffic because they're the ones that have all of the illicit material, and they don't have the paywalls, and they don't have these verify your face every hour age verification checks that are going to be intrusive to self-pleasure that are just going to be intrusive to any kind of internet search. Even if I'm not looking at porn, that's going to be too much to search and have to get up and get your ID every time.
Yeah. It's totally invasive having to upload your biometric data so that you
Yes.
can look at material that is, in my understanding, protected by the First Amendment, right?
Right. And at this point, we're living in an era where the government keeps seizing and requesting and demanding the data from companies based on how they want to search for people, whether it be for immigration status or whatever prosecutorial motivation they're going to have in the future. And I don't think that we as a public should be so willing to submit our IDs and especially biometric data to companies that are hosting age verification because a lot of these companies were the ones in the first place to advocate for the passing of such laws. So they have a not just the legal pretend incentive to protect the children. They have a real financial incentive because now that this is the law, we have like the websites themselves have to pay them to host this age verification on their sites. And now they have collected all of our data. And what are they doing with it? Who's to say that they're not giving it up right away with, open arms to the government?
It's really scary. Giving up our data. We don't have any real consumer data privacy protections in the United States, except for in like
Right.
Illinois with our biometrics in California. But without real data privacy laws in place, like this is really reckless.
Yes,
And
very.
another thing you mentioned that is frightening, I think, is that, we have in the US, porn websites are complying to the best of their ability to these
Yeah.
myriad of laws that are different in all these states, make it impossible to do business. And what I'm
It's
hearing from you is that this just drives traffic and viewers to websites overseas, websites that are not complying and that maybe don't have ethical material on them, right?
Yeah, these are the gonna be the sites that host the child sexual assault material or the non-consensual intimate images, which is otherwise known as revenge porn to people, because they're not going to be verifying the uploads, they're not going to be verifying the users, and this is really where harmful materials are going to be seen by minors. So yeah, it's a real messed up situation because we know Americans are all about a life of convenience, and taking the convenience out of their pleasure seeking is literally going to just drive them elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's scary. There's so much heavy stuff going on. We know that 2026 is going to be a real battle year. FSC is showing up. We're bracing
Best
ourselves
we
for a
can,
for
yes.
a federal AV law. But on this webinar, we're hoping we all know that terrible stuff is happening, but there's some really good stuff. And I just want to circle back to the credit union idea. Can you tell us more
Yeah.
about the credit union, like just so that everybody here knows what FSC is working on for all of us?
Yeah, I believe we're in phase two of four phases that it takes to go through to get federal approval to start your own credit union. And one of the things that we are still working on is boosting our membership numbers to show that we have the numbers to sustain a credit union. And we know that the adult industry, especially in the United States, the upper North America part, um, has thousands of sex workers. They may not all be Free Speech Coalition members, but there's thousands of OnlyFans performer, there's thousands of strippers, there's thousands of sugar babies, there's thousands of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these are more of the people, and on top of the sexual wellness professionals and educators and things of that nature. Like we said, we're reaching out to people adjacent, so maybe doulas and other people that just have adjacent interests in, I would say, positive sexual economy. Yeah, and we're just trying to have that because of the banking discrimination that has shut down many people's accounts because of the various ways that we accept income and receive income. And the hope is that we would not have to deal with any of that if we have a self-supported credit union that is of the industry, as opposed to something financed by some outside finance tech bro, and then it
Mm.
becomes some other BS, or it's just that guy's excuse to like get close to sluts or something, in their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which we see happen all the time with big ventures in our industry.
Oh, yeah. So I hope you all heard that. FSC is starting a credit union, and they need membership to show the powers that be that there's enough of us to warrant a credit union. So please join FSC. It will help fuel the good fight and our only industry trade association. So we got to get behind them, sign up, become a member. It's so worthwhile, and there's also benefits and perks that come with us, with
Yeah.
it, and you can go and check that out. So please check out FSC and support them. Lotus, thank you so much for joining us and kicking off
Thank
this
you.
conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll have you back. Cool. So hard stuff, age verification, censorship, banking discrimination, but good things. Sex workers, it's for us, by us. We're creating our own solutions to the world being shitty to us, and I love that about us. We're going to hear more positive news now with some incredible advocates. Callie O'Kelly and Cassandra Manas. Sorry, I'm butchering your names. Hello, my friends. If you want to come off camera, I'll
Is
have you
Manasseh?
introduce yourselves so that I don't garble your names. Um, will you please introduce yourselves and tell us about Swoon Alliance, your organization, where you're located, and what do you do?
My name is Cassandra Manasseh. It's French. I'm a board member of Swoon as of 2024. Swoon used to be a part of SWAP, but we decided to become a nonprofit in 2005, and we just sort of came out. Um, I used to do sex work in the early 2020s, which I guess it still is the early 2020s. It's 2025, right?
Yeah.
But I started in 2020. On a long basis. I've done sex work before that, but not regularly. Um, and Callie,
Yeah, hi, I'm Calliope or Callie O'Kelly. It's not French. I have been working with Swoon Alliance in its various forms since 2018, around then, since we've been in existence in Pittsburgh. And we're excited to be here.
Cool.
Cass, do you
And
want to talk a little bit about what Swoon is and does?
yeah, tell us about like what are your day-to-day activities? We're really excited to talk about the legislation that you passed, but just give people a sense of what does Swoon Alliance do in Pittsburgh?
we're advocates, but we're also, we create community for sex workers in Pittsburgh. We open up space for them. We create social groups, clothing swaps if anyone needs clothes, spicy clothing for work. We won't help you get into the industry and we won't help you get out, but we will, support you if you are in the industry. We do cash relief as well for sex workers who just want some time off. It's not emergency cash relief, but it is something to hold you over if you don't want to see a client for 30 minutes. Um, and that is the short of it.
And that's amazing. People, sometimes we don't recognize the importance of having community. Sex work can be really isolating, and being isolated in a criminalized industry can be really dangerous. So I know I'm not alone in being really grateful to what you all are doing in Pittsburgh. Thank you. And speaking of criminalization, many forms of sex work remain criminalized, sadly and unjustly. I know that you all have been thinking about that a lot and figuring out how to navigate it in Pittsburgh. And y'all made some moves and you passed some legislation, which was really exciting to hear about. Can you tell us what you all did?
So in 2016, there was a law to decriminalize marijuana hash, and that was done by another member of the Safer Sex Coalition. That is our sort of lobbying branch because nonprofits can't lobby. Um, Basically, what happened was one of the members who worked on that cannabis ordinance decided, why can't we do that for full service sex work? So now instead, we worked together with the City Council of Pittsburgh, and we were able to pass an ordinance that removes prostitution as a misdemeanor. And now full service sex work is a summary offense, which means you can get a fine. It's like a non-traffic citation, but you will not go to jail. It's a summary offense, basically. It's like a ticket.
So if I'm hearing you right, full service sex work defined as prostitution was punishable by with handcuffs. You can get arrested, right? And you all kind of took things down a notch. So now it's more of like a civil offense. You just get fined instead of arrested. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So in Pennsylvania and in most states, prostitution was a misdemeanor, which can send you to jail, can get you up to 2K in fines in Pennsylvania, can have a permanent criminal record that might affect your employment and housing prospects in the future. And now it's still a criminal charge, but it's just a summary citation. So it's closer to something like loitering, um, or like petty theft, that kind of thing. And so the thinking here is that often Pennsylvania is not ready to do full state decrim at this exact moment, nor do we have the resources to do that at this moment. But we're like, the way Pennsylvania cities are set up administratively means that we can pass local laws that are sort of in tension with state laws. And that's something that we can do in Pennsylvania. Um, and so, yeah, now it's a non-traffic citation, which hopefully is often not eligible for housing discrimination, depending on the laws in your city, in your area. It's much easier to expunge. The fees are capped at $100 now, or a few hours of community service. And Cass also just helped us get a grant that will
Nice.
hopefully open our fee fund to help people who can't pay their fees if they do pick up one of these tickets. And yeah, it does not trigger arrests. So there's no reason you should be detained unless you're being uncooperative if you get one of these tickets.
That's incredible. Those of us who are in the sex workers' rights movement talk a lot about decriminalizing sex work, and I feel like that's what you all just did in an incremental way. Sometimes we can feel like full decriminalization is the only thing worth going for, but it sounds like the law that you all helped pass can make a really big difference in people's lives as far as removing roadblocks to things like, housing and employment and not getting detained and arrested, which can be traumatic and really screw your life up.
Yes, you're looking at expungement after 5 years with no arrest. There's some, like you said, there is definitely protection. Um, Basically opens door for local non-discrimination laws for housing based on the conviction grids and protection, possibly, I'm going to say possibly protections for student loans, professional licensing, and DNA sampling. It's not perfect. Police still have discretion, and it only applies within the city limits. And the police are not trained um, exactly on the ordinance. So that is something that's still in progress. And we have yet to see the results of this. We have yet to look into the results of this versus how it was going before when people were being arrested. We'd have to actually get numbers for that.
Some exciting things that I think are happening as a side effect of running this project are first that we have a lot stronger relationships with a weird variety of city agencies who had never talked to us before, who had never heard of us before. And that's been really interesting because I think we're finding that there's actually more allies than we thought throughout the city administration than we knew. Even within like the public safety side of things, the side that does enforcement. Another fun side effect is also like for those of us who are comfortable interacting with police, like because we have a law that we have to train the police on, now we get FaceTime in front of cops to better train them on how to interact with sex workers, which on one hand is a terrible thing, like to give a training on like here's how to run a better arrest. But on the other hand, if like cops finally understand why you shouldn't arrest people for holding condoms, because that's still something that we're fighting instrument of crime charges in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And if like we can just be more on the city's general radar. I know this approach, it might not be shared with every org in every city, and it depends on the culture of your place and the people you have like in your pockets. But I'm optimistic that this is something that's gonna end up being really good in Pittsburgh.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for this work and also for making these moves and inspiring the rest of us. I know that it can be really discouraging to try and pass legislation. I've tried to do it. Sometimes it can just take a long time, but you are working at the city level as opposed to the whole state. You're making a tangible difference in people's everyday lives, and you're also being really brave by interfacing with some pretty hostile entities. Um, I was wondering if you might have any advice for other advocates who might be watching this, people who are trying to change the laws in their region. Any words of encouragement or advice?
I would find a sponsor, find somebody on your side in the city. There's bound to be, well, not bound to be, obviously that's a downside, but if there is somebody that you can, find that is sympathetic toward, sex workers, you can befriend them and, show up at their events and just, show physical support and maybe even form an alliance with them if they're that type, and it really helps.
Thanks.
I think my piece of advice would be first to just keep showing up. Like the more annoying you are, the more successful you're going to be. Another piece of advice that is like sex worker, weed dealer solidarity, man. Like the the drug decriminalization groups have made a lot more progress on decrim than we have in the last 10 years. And like they have some playbooks that we could borrow maneuvers from. Like in some ways, we have a lot of shared problems, types of stigma, like barriers to housing, employment, all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we face very different things, but also I can't think of another group who has more in common than us, who's having the most success compared to us. So yeah, make friends with your local drug decrim groups, the normal groups, NORML normal.
Mhm.
I think these are people that we want to be in community with and learn from.
I agree. Those are both two great pieces of advice. Thank you so much for what you did in Pittsburgh, and thank you for your work at Swoon Alliance. And thanks for talking with us today. It's really great to have you. We'd love to have you back sometime. And for everybody who's listening at home, hopefully you're feeling inspired by what Cassandra and Callie just shared. But maybe you're like, gosh darn it, there is no local sex worker group near me, or I'm an online sex worker. I don't really have that kind of in-person drive to pass legislation locally. There's still something you can do, and EPA United would love to work with you. If you check out our Instagram or our TikTok, you'll see that we are working with content creators like you to talk about issues that matter to us, political issues, social issues. If you want to work with us and use your voice and your platform to make a difference, Sasha's going to drop a link to a Google form in the chat where you can let us know that you'd like to make some videos with us, and we'll be in touch and walk with you as you use your voice. So thank you to Swoon Alliance. Next up, well, I'm very excited to have Miss May here from Decrim 305 in Florida. Ooh, Florida. Oh my goodness, Florida. Miss May, can you introduce yourself? How are you doing down there?
Hello, hello. Sorry. Speaking of drugs, um, what an intro.
Nice.
Hello, I'm Miss May. I use they, them pronouns. And I am the co-founder and executive director of Decrum 305, servicing the community in more ways than one. And we started in 2020. We started with Slut Walk, which is coming up this Saturday. Be there or be a loser. Um, um, but don't worry, it's every year, so there's always time every year to go if you miss it.
What is Slut Walk?
Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna tell you.
Oh, great. Can't wait.
So Slut Walk, so we started Slut Walk as a response to the apathy that we were getting from leftist movements. So my co-founder Johnny and I, we were extremely active. We were at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, and we were actively putting ourselves at risk, getting arrested. We were pulling cash from our purses, merces, and bailing sex workers out, and other people that were getting arrested, civilians that were getting arrested. And so then at some point we were like, hey, can we get a chip to dip in this conversation? There's a lot of Black trans women that are getting killed, that, are sex workers that could use a voice in this. There's a lot of Black men, Black women that are engaged in sex work that could use a chip to dip. And everybody was kind of like, not right now.
Hmm.
Not, it's not the time. And we were like, well, isn't that isn't that what they say? It's not the time, it's not the place. And so we were like, bitch, the time is now. We're throwing a slut walk. Be
Nice.
there or be a loser. And so we didn't have any sponsors. We didn't have anything. We got our whole money together. We put our cash together. We said we're rounding up a couple calls. We told our clients what we were doing, and they were like, "Oh, word! That I'm kind of into that." And so then they put their money into it too, and we put on the first slut walk with our own money. And now we're on the sixth one.
Cool.
And now we got Chatterbait in on it. We got Pornhub. We got StreamMate. We got everybody in on it.
Nice.
So, but it was hard work. It was hard work. And in between all that, it's only once a year, so I had to do something else. And so we do outreach once a month in Overtown. In South Beach, we give out Narcan, we give out condoms, we do HIV testing. We work with AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I'm a certified HIV counselor. So we do a bunch of stuff. We work in the harm reduction sector. So we work with people who use drugs. We work with unhoused individuals. And it's all sex worker led individuals who are leading this work, who are at the forefront of this. Everybody who's on the board of Decrim 305 is a sex worker. And we actually just partnered, we just got grant money that we partnered with the University of Miami with.
Cool.
To do specifically with Idea Exchange, which is the only needle exchange in Miami.
Hmm.
Uh, and they have a women's clinic, the Thrive Clinic. And we will be leading a community action board where we are recruiting sex workers and people who have been trafficked, or survivors of trafficking. And we are creating a screening uh, for doctors to be able to provide resources to sex workers and survivors of trafficking that they may encounter at this clinic.
That's awesome. You're working on so many different levels. Congratulations on getting that grant. Love to see it. Just a few things I want to applaud. Um, Raising your own money to get Slut Walk started, talking to your community, using your own funds, and talking to your clients. Hey, everybody, we should talk to our clients and fans about supporting the causes that we care about. And now you've turned it into the sixth Slut Walk. The images that I've seen from past Slut Walks are incredible. They're just totally like bodacious, just like, yes, sluts on the streets, proudly, calling attention to issues that really matter to them. I hope you all go to Decrim 305's website and their Instagram and check out these pictures. And also, I feel like all sex workers are brave, but I feel like you're being particularly brave operating in Florida, because Florida, I just think of it as like the dark heart of so much bad shit. I think of what ICE is doing down there right now, how there's that essentially a concentration camp in the Everglades. I know that you do a lot of outreach with Decrim 305, and I know that there's a lot of migrant sex workers in Florida. I mean, migrants are everywhere, migrant sex workers are everywhere. Can you talk to us a little bit about how Decrim 305 is interfacing with migrant communities, or if you have any tips for the rest of us on how we can show up for our colleagues that migrated to the US?
Yeah, I actually forgot to mention too that we are very active legislatively.
Hmm.
We do be up there in Tallahassee.
Yes.
I think it was Callie who mentioned being annoying is a good way to get things done, and I do be knowing how to be annoying.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I get a lot of things done that way. I know how to bug people. And that is a good way. I would say that is definitely a very good way is to annoy your legislators. Especially when it is legislative season. When it's session time, they're all at the Capitol, baby. So you can just knock on their door. They're all there. So that's a good time. That's a great time because they're there. They can't leave.
Awesome. I
you,
feel like
you
a
can
new
just stalk
motto,
them.
like be annoying, be annoying,
Be annoying.
be
Don't be
annoying.
afraid to be annoying. These people, you pay their paychecks. Like, don't be afraid. You know what I'm saying? And then additionally, I was gonna say, so Polk County, I want to talk,
Oof,
maybe Blair could talk about this too. Polk County is like notorious for,
it's
uh,
awful.
it's very awful for doing stings and stuff. And they did a recent sting in Polk County, and um, they do a lot of like massage parlors, and recently, actually, they did a sting in Miami-Dade County, and it was a massage parlor. And and I think what grinds my gears is the fact that they put the pictures of the women that they arrest on the news.
That's
Uh,
awful.
but they also try to paint them as victims. So I find that fun. I find that interesting.
It's really fucked.
So um and so I think like there is a lot happening with ICE in Florida. And we're seeing a lot of coverage of like the army that is happening in New York,
Hmm.
and versus like the apathy that is happening in Florida, particularly amongst the Latino community. And I think what I can say is that it's context and misunderstanding. A lot of people are looking at the Latino community and saying, "How can you vote for Trump? How can you vote for Trump? How can you vote for against your own interest?"
Yeah.
And I think that what it is that they're not understanding, one, how the U.S. has played a huge role in destabilizing a lot of those countries. Two, how a lot of these countries have experienced direct violence and harm under so-called communism, and dictatorship.
Hmm.
And so that has created a generational trauma of Red Scare,
Mm.
and the right, the Republicans, they know really well, especially in Florida, how to twist that narrative
Mm.
to the Latino community specifically. And so I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding, in particular when it comes to the Latino community in Florida, and that leads to the divide between the community, the young community, especially the leftists. And oh, I didn't mean to do that with my camera.
It's fine.
It's like very new and fancy.
It's very fancy.
Um, and and the changes that we want to make, and then the Latino community that is voting out of fear,
Mm.
and but also is not consciously aware that that's what they're doing. I'm a second generation American. I can see that. I'm aware of that. So there's something has to happen between these two communities, right? Between these like commie Marxist leftists, progressives, liberals, etc., etc., everybody who's on the left.
Hmm.
Something has to happen between that and the people in the diaspora
Hmm.
to find an understanding in order for us to move forward.
Mm. That's really enlightening to hear. I totally see what you mean. I'm also thinking of people from China and different parts of Asia who might have similar
Precisely.
generational traumas.
Precisely.
That's a great. So when we're talking about advocacy, like a lot of sex workers do identify as being on the left, right? Maybe are part of their Democratic Socialists of America group or something like that. And maybe finding a way to communicate with our neighbors and people in our communities who might come from that generational trauma about our shared values and what we're really trying to accomplish in the world. That's really,
Precisely. Because
mhm,
there's a real anxiety it's there.
yeah,
And I have it too. When I hear communism, Marxism, I'm not gonna lie, my hair stands up
yeah.
because I have that generational trauma that is just there. So it's like we have to, but I have the patience and the like again, I'm second generation. I'm steps away.
Right.
I'm generations away from that trauma, and I'm Americanized enough to be able to see certain things in a way that my grandma can't, that my mom can't, that the people who are voting against their interests aren't. And when all you hear growing up in your house is how bad things are in Cuba and why things were the way they were, and the anxiety of dictatorship and communism. And if you vote for socialist ideologies, you're going to be in a dictatorship. That's all you hear growing up. And
And
so you just
ironically,
have
look at
that
what's happening
anxiety.
here. Yeah, that's that makes so much sense, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. Um, to kind of switch it up a little bit, I know that there are people on the call, myself included, who are always wondering how can we show up for our colleagues who are migrants who might be incredibly endangered in this moment, experiencing anxiety. Um, do you have any
Mm,
tips or ideas for how we as sex workers can show up for those of us who might be targets of ICE?
mm. Well, uh I think it's just making sure that we are providing or making space for what they need. Because, for example, I have someone close to me that is leaving the country soon, um, because of the because he doesn't have citizenship,
Hmm.
and he's a brown person, and so he's just like, for safety and proximity, I'm gonna bounce.
Yeah,
I'm going back. I'm just gonna go back home.
yeah.
Um, and I think that, out of care and love for him, some people might have approached him with, no, but you're in New York. If Mom Donnie gets voted in, he might be able to get rid of ICE and you'll be protected. And, and I think that we have to listen to the very real and unique challenges that migrants are facing,
Hmm.
and understand that they have to do what they got to do to feel safe.
And we got to listen
And
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 support them in their choices and what they need.
exactly. And if we have the privilege to help them make that safe space in whatever way that looks like, we should do that.
Yeah, we should.
Because I know I'm white passing and I got a citizenship, and I'm married, so I got a lot of privilege right there. So
Hmm.
I'm doing what I got to do for whatever that is.
Yeah.
And my husband was recently, I was on a Zoom actually with Melody.
Uh-huh.
Um and he was walking the dog and he got stopped by ICE.
Oh,
Uh and I got off the Zoom and then I came back, but and it was, it was fine. It turned out to be or he thought it was ICE, but it was a police officer. Um so it's just like they're everywhere
yeah.
right now. So you just have to be careful. And recently, just yesterday, I was reporting to a sex worker group chat that they were doing a sting over at the hourly hotels by the airport.
Hmm.
So there's like a lot of activity in Miami, and I just don't think there's a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And I think like even in our own community, like in the sex work community, like we don't really talk about it. Like I think there's a lot of I think there's like a lot of hypervisibility on like people who are like face out like myself. Like I'm hyper visible, face out, like things like that. But like and I can barely get a chip to dip in the conversation with other people in leftist movements.
Yeah.
Migrant sex workers definitely can't get a chip to dip.
Yeah. A resource I want to shout out for everybody is a book that was recently published called Not Your Rescue Project by Elaine Lam and Chanel Gallant. Oh, you got it right there? Pull it out. All right. That's so perfect, May. This was written by migrant sex workers in Toronto who work in massage parlors. And this is essentially a playbook for our movement. Because migrant sex workers have been living under authoritarianism this entire time, totally at risk. And this book is their brain dump on what they've done to protect themselves and advance their rights. Highly recommend it. May, thank you so much. Real quick, when's Slut Walk
Also,
again? Oh yeah, what else you
I want
got?
to say the chapter this book and the chapter on borders
Mm,
highly recommend.
and that's revolting
Um
prostitutes. Yeah.
hmm and I literally just made a little TikTok today where I read a passage from this book actually.
That's awesome. For everybody listening, check out Miss May on social media. They have so much great content, including excerpts from incredible books that we should all be reading. Real quick again, when's Slut Walk happening?
December 13th.
December 13th. Y'all got to be there or be a
December
loser,
13th.
right? I'm going to be a loser. I'm in Vermont. I'll be up here like in a snowbank, freezing my ass
No,
off.
you could never be a loser, Savannah.
Oh,
No, no,
thanks.
I'm just kidding. No one here could ever be a loser because we're all doing shit for the sex worker movement, okay?
Yeah, we are. Miss May, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you back sometime. Really appreciate you. Um, That was a lot, everybody. There's a lot going on, but Slut Walk is happening. Sex workers are still out there being bold and talking about what they need and what they're doing for their communities. Again, let's say you want to do something. You're like, oh, I'm not an in-person sex worker. I don't know if I want to do in-person advocacy, but I want to do something online. Have we got a class for you? We have a training coming up by somebody named Organizer Memes. That's the name they go by, Organizer Memes. You can check them out on social media. And they're going to host a class at Spokes Hub called Memes 101. So if you want to learn how to relay information through images that you can piece together, symbolic images, to help convey a message or meaning or help to educate people on complex issues. Sasha's going to drop a link in the chat to the Eventbrite so you can register for this Memes 101 class. And that's hosted by Spokes Hub, which is again for us by us. It's a virtual academy for sex workers' rights advocates. And you can come and learn a variety of skills. We're going to have our 2026 curriculum posted soon. So check out Spokes Hub. Moving along, I'm very excited to have Blair Hopkins from Swap Behind Bars join us. Blair.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Hanging in there. Yeah, hanging in there.
We're in your
Wishing for
fancy
permanent
office,
daylight
I
savings
see.
time. Yes, I am out of the office. I'm taking refuge from the trampoline park right now.
Oh, the trampoline park. That sounds intense.
It's good. Get those kids off of the games for a minute. But yeah, so my name is Blair Hopkins. I'm the executive director of Swap Behind Bars. That's the sex worker outreach project. We also recently subsumed Swap USA. So that franchise is part of our organization now. Um, the focus of Swap Behind Bars, or of the Sex Worker Outreach Project more broadly now, is to focus on supporting criminalized workers and people who have been impacted by the criminal legal system. So predominantly, but not exclusively, street-based sex workers and people who are in the criminalized areas of the trade. That includes support for people who have been arrested. So bailout, we do bailout funds, we do public, legislative, and like agency education around heavy bust times, heavy vice times like the Super Bowl. We also support people while they are incarcerated, when they're incarcerated for a longer term, people who are up for years and years. We run a pen pal program, what they call mentorship by mail. We run Amazon wish lists for some of our predominantly women and female identified people who are on the inside, to help them get educational materials and also like pleasure reading, things like that. And then we offer reentry support as well to help people transition back into the community. And additionally, we run the nationwide community support line, which is 24/7, as well as the resource directory, which is an ever growing large directory of vetted, community vetted, and organizationally by us vetted resources that are sex worker safe.
Is that all you're doing? Is that it, Blair?
No, it's not. We also do some direct case management, but my personal passion project is organizational development for smaller organizations. We offer a lot of fiscal sponsorship.
Yep.
We're an interesting blend over here of knowledgeable and risk aggressive. So we are in the unique position of having a bureaucrat in charge. That's me. Somebody who, I have navigated these waters a lot, and I really want to bring legitimacy and structure and institution building to the sex worker rights movement, because I think that's the next natural step in our maturity with all the incredible work that activists have been doing underground for decades now. I think that the next step over this last, I would say 5 or so years, is to start getting people status. Start getting us on payroll platforms. Start getting us all the places where we can offer health insurance, things like that. Get people paid for their advocacy. Help people learn learn the rules of the road, so that they can work the system to our favor and show up as a real political demographic of people who understands the inner workings, and that enables us to pass that knowledge and our access, my access to folks who have been kind of historically kept away from those systems of power. So that's my personal project, is offering fiscal sponsorship and program development to other organizations.
That's awesome, and we certainly need it. I agree that, it's like sex workers, we're good at a lot of things, but maybe nonprofit management is not something that we come to naturally. And so thank you for being a bureaucrat. And also thank you for supporting SWAT Behind Bars in the plethora of incredible direct services it provides, especially to sex workers who are facing some of the biggest risks and threats and dangers. And it's not just sex workers. SWAT Behind Bars serves people in the sex trade generally. And I've learned a lot from all of you about what exploitation and sex trafficking actually looks like. We have a lot of narratives, right? There's a lot of movies out there. But then what does it really look like when somebody's being coerced into the sex trades? I wanted to bring you on because we have a very high profile sex trafficking case going on that's really, really frustrating and disgusting, which is the Epstein situation. It's really been frustrating me to no end to see no action happening on this, to see it used as a political chip. I can only imagine what the survivors feel like being part of this circus, of politicization and being tokenized by both sides to try and get some gain. I just kind of wanted to hear candidly, Blair, what do you think about what's going on with the Epstein files, but also what do you think that people in the sex trade who are experiencing exploitation and trafficking actually need?
So I think that men with a proximity to power and money have always abused people, and likely always will abuse people, and will be held accountable here and there, almost in a culturally cyclical nature. And what that accountability could look like for Epstein's victims, I think that we don't really have to imagine how those victims feel, because they're the ones who are public are very, very public about it. And they have been, I think, really gracious in setting the terms for what accountability looks like for them. The majority of the women who've been public about their experience have talked about how they don't have a lot of expectations for criminal charges for the men who abused them, so much as they just would like to see some transparency and maybe some social or cultural consequence. And at times, I think that's the best that can be asked for. I think that the tactician in me thinks that this is a really effective wedge issue that we should be grabbing onto as tightly as we possibly can, because it's a place where we can peel off a lot of independents and even some what they call like the crank coalition, which is kind of like the woo-woo people who went down the alt-right pipeline due to like being crunchy moms. And
Mm-hmm.
then they got a little anti-vax, and then they got a little QAnon, and they got a lot of QAnon. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those people traditionally tended to align more with the left. And it was only at the rise of QAnon and the Epstein conspiracies, conspiracy, just because it's a conspiracy doesn't mean it's not true. Those folks went down the alt-right pipeline as a result of that kind of stuff. So this is a chance for us to get some of those people back in our corner, even if it means having to kind of prostrate ourselves as people being victimized in order to get their attention, their alliance, their allegiance, and their money. Most importantly, their money. Always, most importantly, is the money. So that's kind of what I think. I also think that it's a good opportunity to have some conversations about what trafficking is and isn't. We've been trying to highlight that every time there's a new cycle. Another one to look into is what's going on with Mr. Matt Gaetz. Speaking of Florida, or as I like to call him, Unknown Hinson, after he's been dead for a while. Just that man is, his Botox provider needs to go to
So
prison.
bad. It's so
It's so
bad.
bad. I got spocked once. It's bad, but never like that. Never like that. And what exploitation looks like and what accountability looks like, I think is pretty subjective, and it's actually unfortunately legally subjective as well, right? You mentioned Polk County. We have a Sheriff Grady in there. He sucks. He's awful. It's a very religious area. All the people in anti-trafficking there are very religious, but we've actually made incredible inroads with that community, not with the sheriff. There, he's impossible, but with some of the church ladies, right, who run the anti-trafficking coalitions and the human trafficking coalition there, that's kicked us off and invited us back on like 6 times, just by continuing to show up with our own chair and putting it at the table.
Annoying.
Right.
Be annoying.
Be annoying. Yep. And you know what? Be friendly. Being friendly is important. Like I said, this is as terrifying and awful as this time is. It is a fascinating time for coalition building because it is a time of strange bedfellows. There are some opportunities that I'm working on to get inroads with, like Mothers Against Media Addiction, who you would normally not think of as being somebody that we could even be in the same room with online. But they also don't like social media and tech oligarchs. And they could, I think, be brought along on age verification if you're friendly enough, right? So, I think that we're in a time of tremendous opportunity right now. For coalition building, for narrative reshaping, that's a big one. The more places where we take the lead on the narrative, a really good example of this is the Joey the Player case that I'll talk about here in a minute. But the more opportunities we take to grab that narrative and be at the forefront, the more our ideas kind of trickle down into the public consciousness.
That's a lot of great advice. So what I'm hearing is that we can use what's going on with the Epstein case to maybe reach out to some people who have veered off to the right, right? And try and bring them back in by talking about what's going on with that case. Maybe help them see that their new faction on the right is not something they want to be aligned with. Also, I'm hearing that this is a time where we can re-educate on what trafficking and exploitation actually looks like, because people need to hear it from us as opposed to watching it on a TV show, right? Where a lot of bad policy comes from TV shows, in my opinion, and support for bad policies. And also, this is a great time to form coalition and to work with unlikely allies, right? You mentioned the Joey the Player case. We're here to talk about sex worker wins as well as the hard stuff and what's happened with the Joey the Player case. If you could talk briefly about what that is and what y'all did with it, that would be awesome.
So for those who are unfamiliar, Jose Torres was a man who kidnapped, raped, and terrorized sex workers predominantly in the northeastern United States for over a decade. And we're talking probably hundreds of women, and it would really not surprise me if there was at least one murder in there, but they haven't found any evidence of that. He's a violent offender. He's a compulsive repeat offender. And he finally got on the radar of the Fed 5 years ago or something. Like, it's been quite a while, because he brought a woman in from Canada. And so when she reported him, she was going to a different set of authorities that actually gave a shit as opposed to the local police in New Jersey where he lived. Um, Now, we were contacted via the community support line by an FBI agent who was working the case, wanting to know if we could help them find any other victims who would come forward. And we were able to work out a way to do that so that those folks were not only were, but also felt safe coming forward. The efforts, the work we did with the FBI on that case, and with the pro bono, like with the donated legal representation for the victims, resulted in, I want to say it was either 3 or 4 additional charges being filed on him. He recently was
Good.
convicted, and he was sentenced to like 25 years. Like he's going to do a long time in prison. So those are the kinds of opportunities that we have. You have to be really careful, right, when you're dealing with law enforcement. Federal law enforcement is a little easier to deal with generally, not so much right now.
Oh.
But that's what you would call a strange bedfellow situation, right? We were able to act as an intermediary, make sure that any victims who were willing to come forward had representation and both were and felt safe, had connections to other resources if they felt they needed them, and bring those people into our sphere. And some of them have gone on to do their own, activism as well because they were introduced to community and felt empowered and protected.
Awesome. So it's like through the community support line, you caught wind of this case and you were able to start working with the victims as victim advocates with law enforcement. Thank you for your brave service. It's always really frightening to work with law enforcement. Tricky, not for everybody, but you all did it successfully. And now this asshole is behind bars for 25 years, which is fucking awesome because that's where he belongs. And also thank you for building community for sex workers who need it the most. Thank you for building community from the inside out, as you say. Sex workers in detention, being incarcerated. Everybody here, please support SWAT Behind Bars. They do incredible work. And also, if you're thinking of starting a nonprofit, but you don't really know how to, or maybe you don't want to, talk to Blair, bureaucrat extraordinaire. And Blair can help give you some developmental guidance and maybe even take you on as a fiscal sponsor. And I just posted in the chat 877-776-2004. That's a number I have drilled into my brain. That's the number I'm going to call if I need help. That's the Sex Work Community Support Line hosted by SWAT Behind Bars. Blair, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to keep you from the trampoline park for too long. So
Fine, save me.
send me a GIF. I want to see you on the trampoline.
You
Please.
know what? The older I get, I I do my Kegels. Let me just say I do my Kegels, okay? And I've never birthed the children. These are not my children that I'm taking to the trampoline park. They are my stepchildren. And yet somehow I can barely not piss myself at this place. Every time you jump, and you're like, what is happening? We got
It's
to
a pelvic
clamp
floor
this
challenge for
down.
sure. Yes.
It's
Yes.
wild. Being 40 is really a thing.
It really is. I feel you.
Mhm.
Fist bump to you, my friend. Blair, thank you so much. We'll have you back sometime, and thank you so much for the incredible work you're doing with your team at Swap Behind Bars. We really appreciate you. See you, Blair. Um, wow, that was a lot. Swap Behind Bars is doing tremendous work, really, really complicated, important work to help keep people safe and bring perpetrators to justice. If you want to do something, but maybe not all that, you can do something with EPA United. You can use your voice and your platform to make videos with us to speak up on issues that really matter to you in the community. Sasha's going to drop a link in the chat to our forum where you can let us know if you'd like to join us in this endeavor. And if you want to see what we're talking about these videos, go check out EPA United on TikTok or Instagram or another social. But we have another speaker for you. Last but not least, we're saving the good stuff for last because we need some positive news. We have Jack from Below Sea Level Aid. Jack, thank you so much for joining us. Really glad to have you here. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jack Waggersbach Schloyer. I am born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, and that is where Below Sea Level Aid is working out of. We are a community-ran harm reduction mutual aid group. We focus on harm reduction, safe sex, safer use, public health, all the good things wrapped into one.
That's awesome. It was so exciting this year to become aware of your work at Below Sea Level Aid, or I guess it was just a tail end of 2024 that we became aware of you. And just love seeing you all hold it down in New Orleans with your allies and your colleagues. There's some incredible sex worker community down there. And you all work together this summer to pass some local legislation, which just made my heart sing when I read about it. Can you tell us about what you all did together?
Yeah, we worked hand in hand with the Trans Income Project, which is another nonprofit mutual aid group in New Orleans. They mainly focus on direct trash can transfers with trans and queer community, primarily focusing on trans sex workers. And so our policy director, Lauren Hall, who's an attorney, worked with their ED, Natalie Rupp, to work on this really great piece of legislation that got passed through New Orleans City Council. Basically, it is a ordinance that is to protect immunity of sex workers that report crimes that happen against them while they're on the job. So if you are a sex worker in New Orleans Parish, and let's say you are robbed while you're working, you are now able to go report that crime to New Orleans Police Department and not be worried about being arrested for the act of sex work.
That's incredible. Talking about incremental steps, we talk about decriminalizing sex work altogether, so we don't got to worry about the police, period. But in the meantime, passing an immunity bill, there's a bunch of them all over the country now. Sasha, if you can find that page on decriminalized sex work with their map of immunity bills or their list, pop that in the chat. But this is great because what I'm hearing is that if sex workers are a victim of a crime or if they witness a crime, they can now report that without fear of being arrested by cops. Is that right?
Correct. And currently that's only in Orleans Parish, so it's not all of, of Louisiana yet. So if you interact with a state trooper of Louisiana, it's not the same as if you're solely in Orleans Parish. But for now, in Orleans Parish, you cannot be arrested.
That's awesome. And this reminds me of the strategy that Swoon Alliance had earlier of working on like a local level, So are you working, that's the city or the county, Orleans Parish?
So count like parish is our county.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So any sex workers operating in that region now can report crimes without fear of arrest. That's a huge step forward. And there was another component of the bill that you passed, right, around condoms as evidence. Is that right?
Yeah, that one I believe is still a little tricky in
A little
writing
tricky. Can you
with
tell us
our
about it though?
city council. But yes, it does state that you cannot use condoms as evidence when you are being reported against as a sex worker. Um, so if someone wants to tell on you for sex work or if you get caught for sex work, they can't pull a condom from the scene and use it as evidence against you.
Which is bananas. I remember first hearing about condoms used as evidence for prostitution in New York. I know the advocates worked really hard in New York to repeal that like a long, long time ago. And it's just wild to me that cops could just say, "Oh, you have too many condoms. You must have an intent to distribute sex commercially." And because I mean, it seems to me like that would just discourage people from carrying condoms, and that's not safe, right?
Not safe for anybody.
Not safe for anybody. You said there's some trickiness to it. Is that anything you want to elaborate on? You don't have to, but if you want to, you're welcome to.
I think just being in the deep South, sex is already so taboo
Right.
here. And the conversation, even though Orleans is progressive, um, people still aren't sure and they don't understand the language that's being used. When these ordinances first passed, like there's a bunch of articles that came out saying that Orleans Parish just decriminalized sex work, and I had to like go back and ask for corrections because that's not true at all. We weren't able to do that. But people see sex work and immunity or sex work and criminalization in the same sentence, and they think, oh, all sex work is now legal.
Right. Yeah, the public really doesn't get it. You got to be like a nerd or somebody living it to really get it. Thanks for making those corrections. But also thanks for doing this important incremental work of helping to achieve immunity in Orleans County. Um, what's next for below sea level aid? What are you all working on, or what would you like to pursue next? Do you have any ideas?
We have a big push right now on getting with our local sex work community, and talking about PrEP, safe sex practices. Um, they just released that twice a year injectable PrEP that we're really trying to push on folks who maybe don't have a primary care provider, don't necessarily seek out care every few months. to keep them protected as long as we can. And so right now, that's our biggest push. We are currently incentivizing our rapid HIV and STI testing so
Awesome.
that you can care about your health, but you can also come get like a $25 gift card when you come and get tested. And so we're also hoping to do that with PrEP as well.
That's awesome. And it's so ultra important. And just an example of how sex workers are on the front lines of protecting our communities, but also all of society. What's happened with public health in our country, and especially with HIV, AIDS, prevention, funding, education at the federal level. Um, it's hit so many public health departments, and I've been hearing around the country that a lot of individuals and groups don't have access to rapid HIV testing or counseling or things like PrEP. But here you all are doing it in the South, in a deeply red area, providing those important tools for people who really need them, and also incentivizing them if maybe it's not top of mind. I think the gift cards is a great idea. Um, that's really cool. So, would you have any advice for anyone who's listening if they want to, let's say they're in a tricky region, like the South or somewhere else, if they want to make change, is there anything that you've learned that you would like to impart as like advice or encouragement?
Yeah, just echo the sentiment that you have to have a buddy that's already in the network.
Mhm.
Luckily, we had Mayor-elect Helena Moreno on our side. She was able to work with us on the ordinance and get it passed through city council. But unfortunately, like it's hard to get anything done if you don't already have that in. And so again, be annoying, really be on top of it, be persistent, and that's the only way we're able to get anything done.
That's awesome. So you got to have a legislative champion, somebody who's elected, who's like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome, Jack. Thank you so much, Sasha. If we could drop a link to Below Sea Level Aid so people can learn about it, that'd be awesome. And thank you so much for the great work you're doing, Jack. It's really inspiring to us, and we're glad that you could join us today.
Thanks, Savannah.
Yeah. That brings us to the end of our program. If people who are still here, if our speakers, if you want, you can come off. I thought that we could wrap up with a little Be Annoying chant. But for those of you who are listening, make sure to fill out our survey as a content creator if you want to work with EPA United to use your voice and your platform to make videos with us about issues that are important. Also, we're going to have that Memes 101 class with this person named Organizer Memes, and they're going to teach us how to symbolically communicate online with imagery, memes, so that we can kind of shape hearts and minds. So if anybody's here, feel free. Otherwise, it might just be Miss May and I. All right, May, are you ready?
Yes.
Be annoying.
Be annoying. Be
Be annoying.
annoying.
Be
Be
annoying.
annoying.
Be
Be
annoying.
annoying. Yes.
Thank you. You all are awesome. Thank you so much to my colleagues Sasha B and Five Star for helping put this together. Thank you all for joining us. Visit EPA United, get on our newsletter, and also follow all of these incredible organizations. We really only have each other in this moment. So we got to stick together and celebrate our wins and learn from each other. Thank you all so much, and good night.